Hello and welcome to another episode of Scott Reads Comics. Today we'll be covering Avengers number 278, published in 1987 by Marvel Comics. We have a wonderful cover here by the great John Buscema and Tom Palmer, the art team that handles the interior of this amazing issue, and was the art team for an epically long run of Avengers that started around issue 255 and went all the way up through the 280s, I believe, to the early 290s. And even after Buscema left, Palmer stayed on and continued his amazing finishing work on the Avengers, sort of maintaining the look of it. Left for a little while and came back and did some amazing work over Steve Epting's pencils as well. So we've got a great issue here. Let's dig into it. On the cover, we've got one of my favorite old Avengers villains, Tyrak the Treacherous, facing off against a quintet of Avengers, the She-Hulk, the Black Knight, the Wasp, Captain Marvel, and a soon-to-be Avenger, Dr. Druid. We have these cool corner box heads, floating heads, Buscema Palmer floating heads, Hercules, Captain Marvel, Captain America, Black Knight, and Wasp. Getting into it, our title is Pressure. Stan Lee presents, Roger Stern writer, John Buscema breakdowns, Tom Palmer finished art, Jim Novak letterer, Christy Shield colorist, Mark Grunwald editor, Jim Shooter editor-in-chief. And just briefly on the artwork in here, I'm fairly certain, having seen some of them in some articles, John Buscema's breakdowns on these stories were pretty loose. He's a fantastic storyteller, a great figure guy, and really good at doing superhero and barbarian action. But I think his work on this title throughout his run as a breakdown artist was indeed very loose, and so a lot of the heavy lifting is done by Tom Palmer in these stories, and it's just a phenomenal pairing of the two. 1 week ago, Avengers Mansion was ravaged by a battle between Earth's mightiest heroes and their sworn enemies, the Masters of Evil. It was in all the papers. This morning, in the pre-dawn hours, the mansion faces an assault of a different kind. So these guys in these boiler suits with these high-tech weapons think they're going to break into Avengers Mansion and perhaps loot it of whatever additional stuff has been left behind. But they did not reckon for some of the hazards, and one of the guys already meets with misfortune as it's very dark when they penetrate into the mansion, and he falls. Look at that hole. He must have fallen a good 20 feet. Burke, can you hear me? You all right? No, my leg, broken. But it gets worse for them. They are met with stiff resistance from none other than Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp. You're not going anywhere except down. And she blasts a hole with her Wasp sting. And this is the Wasp much later in her career, obviously, from her founding in the Avengers. She is confident. She is a leader. Her powers have evolved to the point where she's a formidable foe. She can alter her size just beyond insect size and normal size. She can go in between. So Roger Stern has developed her tremendously since taking over the book in the mid-220s. I don't believe it. Did you think the Avengers would go off and leave our building unguarded? Even for looters, you boys aren't too bright. So they're trying to stop her, and this time she does an amazing, in this cool open panel here, she shifts size back up to her normal size, her wings vanish. She's utilizing her momentum, wood, to knock this boiler-suited thug unconscious. This guy's done with it. He's out. Nobody's following me. She must have gotten them all. Maybe she didn't notice me in the confusion. Maybe I can still get away. Maybe. Hold it right there, son. Oh, no. Where do you think you are going? Captain America asks him. Nowhere, Captain America, sir. So this guy basically just, he knows what's coming, so he gives up his weapon without a fight. And he and the Wasp corral the rest of the guys and call for a special team to come and pick them up. Cap tells them, You fellows are lucky that you picked the Wasp watch to break in. Captain Marvel might not have gone so easy on you. Yes, sir, lucky. And the other guy says, oh, shut up, to his partner. Later, when word of this gets out, Jan, it should discourage other looters. I hope so. It's hard enough being Avengers chairwoman without having to deal with two-bit break-ins. Well, another few days and the building will be fully secured for reconstruction. Don't get discouraged. You're doing a fine job. I don't know how we get along without you. I was afraid you'd say something like that. Thanks, Cap. Thanks. So the Wasp basically thinks that to herself. She's had a long haul as Avengers leader, and a lot of bad stuff has happened. And she's obviously showing some signs of mental fatigue. I'll leave things in your care. There's plenty of cold cuts in the fridge. Okay, Jan, take it easy, Cap replies. And Wasp thinks to herself as she's flying to the hospital to check on Hercules. Take it easy. I wish. It would be so delightful to slip off to Aruba for a few days or months, but there's still so much to do, so much to oversee. Soon at New Hope Memorial Hospital. Sorry, Miss Van Dyne, but there's nothing further to report on Hercules. His condition is stabilized, but he's still deep in a coma. So they can't tell at this point, after Hercules having been beaten near to death in Avengers number 274, they can't tell if he's going to make a recovery or not. And so the Wasp tells him to don't spare any expense. It'll all be paid for. And just take the best care of him that you can. And interestingly enough, the doctor says, his physique's so extraordinary. I can't imagine the power that could have done this to him. And Wasp replies, it was the power of 6 men, Doctor, the weakest of whom could rip a car apart with his bare hands. So that was Mr. Hyde, Goliath, and the Wrecking Crew who beat a drunken Hercules near to death. Then here the Wasp checks on Jarvis, and he is his old stalwart self, although he too was savagely beaten by Mr. Hyde and is suffering from some trauma from that. And as the Wasp leaves, she says, take care, Jarvis. I'll think good thoughts about you. Save a dance for me? Of course, madam. She thinks to herself as she flies out of his room. I'm so glad Jarvis is doing better. It still hurts that we couldn't protect him from the masters of evil. Shielding people from danger is part of our job as Avengers. The failure is so much worse when it strikes close to home. And here, shortly, just 2 corridors away, pardon me, I must have made a wrong turn. I wanted room 209. This is room 209. Oh, I'm looking for Dane Whitman. Has he been moved? No, Mr. Whitman checked out last night. His doctor said it would be all right, as long as he took things easy. The Wasp is not happy. She was going to check on the Black Knight, Dane Whitman, and he has left the hospital, checked himself out. She thinks to herself, oh, fine. The Black Knight's idea of taking it easy is to work 10 hours instead of 12. Thank you, nurse. Sorry to interrupt. Where could he have gone? Not back to the mansion, certainly. Within minutes, the Wasp arrives at 4 Freedoms Plaza, new home of the fabled Fantastic Four. No, Mr. Costello, there's still no word from the Submariner. There, on a newly leased office floor, below FF headquarters, she begins another day of managing the Avengers' affairs. I'll let you know the moment we hear anything. Excuse me, I have a call on another line. Hello, Avengers Operations. Well, Mrs. Sikorsky, is the government ever going to approve our new security clearances? I appreciate your efforts, but the Security Council has been dragging its feet for months. They've given us nothing but grief, and I'm sick of it. I want to see some action, soon. So briefly, the Submariner abruptly left the Avengers before the attack on the mansion by the Masters of Evil, so he wasn't there to help. He was drawn back into the affairs of Atlantis to deal with things there. And Mr. Sikorsky is the Avengers security liaison to the government. He took the place of Henry Peter Garrick, the much maligned Henry Peter Garrick. Wasp thinks to herself, will this ever stop? The federal government wants this. state that the contractors can't guarantee a start date for mansion repairs, and the Submariner's attorney wants to know where his client is. I don't blame him. I'd like to know too. There hasn't been word one from Namor since he took his leave of absence. We sure could have used his strength against the Masters of Evil, but I had no idea of where he was, or how to contact him. I don't even know where the Black Knight is. Oh, there's so much to do. So the Wasp is leaning back in her chair, and suddenly there's this dream sequence. She falls asleep, and she is faced with dealing with her teammates here, and they're all dressed in formal wear. And it's all a very frustrating experience for her. And at the end of the dream, Black Knight says, "There's no time to lose. You're in charge, Wasp." And Cap adds, "It's your responsibility, yours alone. You're the only one who can do it, Wasp. The only one." So this is her own guilt and exhaustion playing up on her. No. Wasp? No, what? She's awoken by the She-Hulk. She-Hulk? Good heavens, you gave me a start. Sorry, Jan. Didn't realize you were so soundly asleep. That's all right. Neither did I. I must have nodded off for a moment. What are you doing here? I wanted to apologize for not being around when the Masters made their big play. The FF had me out in the Pacific, and that's okay, Jennifer. It's not okay. They didn't need me as much as you did. I could have done the Avengers some real good. Life is full of could-haves, Jen. Don't let it bother you. Oh, all right. Say, why don't I give you a hand? This place could use some tidying up. So She-Hulk takes off her skirt that she was wearing over her costume. And again, it's not an FF costume, notice. She had been a member of the FF while the Thing was absent from the team during this time period. But of course, before that, we knew she wasn't a long-term Avenger in good standing. I know, housekeeping's really gone on the back burner. If you could move those computer modules over to the far wall, it'd be great. No sweat. Well, we know it's 1987. Look at the size of the computer modules. Things have been pretty hectic. The worst. Stopping the Masters of Evil was easy compared to dealing with all this endless paperwork. I'd like to burn it, but I have to arrange for the mansion's rebuilding and work up a new Avengers roster. Hercules is lost to us indefinitely, and I don't know where to find... And the She-Hulk interrupts her. Look no further. I can return to active duty right now. The Thing is back with the FF, and I'm pretty much at loose ends. I was going to take a vacation, but if you need me, I'm yours. And Wasp thinks to herself, vacation, what a lovely word. Thanks, Jen. I knew I could count on you. Now if I could just track down the Black Knight. Oh, didn't you get his message? She-Hulk asked, but before we go on, great open panel here, and superb work by Palmer and Buscema on the Wasp's expression here. Her sort of wistful, you can see the wistful look on her face as she thinks about a possible vacation. So, what was the Black Knight's message? He left word last night that he was flying out to Hydrobase. So, Hydrobase, miles east of the New Jersey shore lies the astounding artificial island, leased months ago by the Avengers as a floating airbase for their fleet of supersonic Quinjets. And this afternoon, the scene of a spirited sparring match. Clack, clack. This was just what I needed. I was going stir-crazy in that hospital. I'm glad I ran into you there, Doc. I never suspected you were into hand-to-hand combat. From the way Cap and the Wasp spoke of Dr. Druid, I got the idea you were strictly a sorcerer. Actually, I'm not a sorcerer at all. I've dabbled in the occult and investigated cases of unexplained phenomena. But my powers are mainly those of the mind. One tabloid called me the master of the unknown. That's as good a job description as any. You're quite good with the quarterstaff, Dane. Just a little talent I picked up while wasting 5 years in the 12th century. I am aware of your sojourn into the past. It wasn't a pleasant time, Druid. The Crusades sounded so noble when I was a kid. But there's nothing noble about war, especially a holy war. I had to learn the hard way. So great shot of these two sparring. Dr. Druid, no slouch in the physical department. So a message comes over. Take 5, Doc. This call is probably for me. And the Black Knight thinks to himself, he pretty much knows it's going to be the Wasp, and he's also sort of sheepish about it because he has a pretty big crush on her, and she has not reciprocated his affections. I'm just a friend and teammate to her. I was crazy to think it'd go any farther. Dane Whitman, have you taken complete leave of your senses? You have a concussion. Yes, Jan, I know. But I figured I could rest and recreate out here as well as I could in the city. Look, I even brought a doctor along to keep me in line. You remember Anthony Druid. Hello, Miss Van Dyne. You needn't worry about your errant knight. He has the constitution of an ox, and I do have sufficient medical training to make sure he doesn't overdo things. Well, if you're sure, quite sure, dear lady, there's not a thing to worry about. And then suddenly an alarm goes off. Ree! What on earth? That's the island perimeter security alarm. We've got an intruder. So great, another great. This is a cool trend in this book where the last panel of some of these pages is an open panel. So we have it here. It's going to repeat again here, and maybe on some of the following pages. But it's a neat use of that. Here we have Whitman as the Black Knight grabbing his ebony blade, his cloak, and his helmet. And then, who is the intruder? We're going to find out. Indeed, along the island's northeast shore. Ha, I found it at last. Now I shall prove my full worth. As the massive figure wades toward the beach, special stunulator cannons automatically deploy from hidden positions. Locking on target, the cannons fire a stream of nerve blasts designed to stun the mightiest invader. But, Kronk, he is completely unaffected by them, and it is Tyrak the Treacherous. And here's Dane on his hover cycle. About time I started pulling my weight again. I wasn't much use during the siege of the mansion. It shouldn't take long to settle this. The defense web showed just one lone intruder, probably either a lone commando or an advanced scout for who or what the devil are you? I might ask the same of you, air breather. But if you reside here, it is only fair that you know the name of your conqueror. I am Tyrak the Treacherous. Is that so? Well, I'm the Black Knight, and you're trespassing on Avengers property. Avengers? You're an Avenger? Then your death will be doubly sweet. Great use of scale here in the two figures. While he's still a bit back in the background in this open panel, you can just see Tyrak's sheer size by the way he uproots and hefts this tree. Very cool. Love to see him fight Sasquatch at some point. I don't know if that's ever happened, but he's about Sasquatch's size, maybe 10 to 12 feet tall. Very cool. And I love his classic colors too. Why? Have my teammates given you a bad time before? Don't expect me to be any easier. By the great depths, you split the tree with one swing of your blade. Must be bewitched. Something like that. I could do the same to you. Save yourself some trouble. Surrender now. Never! And another open panel here is Tyrak does the old shockwave trick that many super strong characters do in comics. Thoom! Good Lord! The shockwave he kicked up has knocked my atomic steed's gyros totally out of kilter. Got a ditch. Now, little man, I shall take that sword and use it on you. I think not. Dr. Druid makes the fight, leaping on Tyrak's back and covering his head with his cloak. Another land flea dares attack me? Tyrak is way too strong for that maneuver. Tears it easily. Loathsome slime. I shall take no more such indignities. Tyrak, wait. You can see that we are no threat to you. There is no need to fight. No need at all. You don't even want to fight. So here Druid's trying to use his powerful hypnotic abilities to suggest to Tyrak that he should assume a peaceful posture. Don't want to. No! What am I saying? Foul air breather. You will not entrance me. So it wasn't enough. It didn't work. And meanwhile, Captain Marvel shows up on scene. The Wasp's radio summons was right on the money. This intruder is much more than the Black Knight can handle on his own. I recognize him from the Avengers data files. Tyrak, formerly of Atuma's undersea hordes, an Atlantean warrior bioengineered with one gigantic mass of mean. Eh? Now what? But like all sea creatures, he's especially susceptible to dehydration. The Vision once put Tyrak away with thermo-optic beams, but I can go one further. By becoming infrared heat. Gah! So here's a great sequence here of her circling and then blasting Tyrak with heat, and she continues to assail him and dehydrate him. Unyieldingly, the Golden Avenger clings to her foe, a roiling, radiant wave of energy which he cannot shake. Great work on the script by Roger Stern. He's just masterful. And water, much reach, water. Tyrak face plants onto the beach before he can. Meanwhile, the next instant overhead, looks like we missed out on the fun, Wasp. You have a weird idea of fun, Jenny. Set us down over there. So the Wasp and the She-Hulk have arrived. And so, that was that. Of course, we still need to get Tyrak into a holding tank for questioning. So this is the She-Hulk. Impressive, Dr. Druid thinks. And Dr. Druid is a tall man. I believe he's like 6'5", 300 pounds, according to the official handbook of the Marvel Universe. And She-Hulk still towers over him at least 6'7". I wonder why the big lummox attacked. As I recall, he has a big mouth. Let's see if he tells us, the Wasp adds. And Whitman thinks to himself, a lot of good I was. Maybe I should have stayed in the hospital. Or maybe I should just pack it in. And Druid warns them, wait. I sense an unusual brainwave pattern. Tyrak, he's conscious. Tyrak was ever conscious, fools. Again, the scale is apparent here, and it's very cool. He's so much bigger than them. I only feigned helplessness. And here he takes out his most deadly foe in this cool open panel. He slams Captain Marvel, and she is going to be out of the fight. You miserable. That lady is a friend of mine, She-Hulk says as she wades into him. And anyone who hurts my friends has made a big mistake. She hits him again with a solid right cross. You are uncommonly strong, woman, but none beneath the waves are as mighty as Tyrak. I once beat the Submariner senseless. You will not defeat me. So great shot of him here, literally pounding the She-Hulk into the ground. Very cool. And Wasp flies around to bail her out. And you won't defeat the Avengers. We've stopped you before. We'll stop you again. No, never again. And Wasp thinks to herself, his ego still matches his size, but a full power sting in just the right place might turn the tables if, no, wait a minute, I'm not going to. So for some reason she backs off even though she detected some kind of weakness here, and instead she just decides to distract him. And meanwhile, the Black Knight is moving into position. Sting him, Wasp. Don't you see a secret? Maybe she doesn't. Maybe I'm the only one who's guessed it. With his reach, I'll get only one chance at this. I have to make it count. So Black Knight steps into the fray and slashes Tyrak's tunic open, revealing, nice armor, fella. Holds all sorts of things. My water containment reservoir, no! So that's how you kept from drying out. You had a moisturizing system built into your armor, so Captain Marvel is awake and back into the fray, and back with infrared heat again. Marvel, you're okay. He just clipped me, Dane. I'm a little sore, but I'll live. You're not the only one who's sore. Everyone out of my way, She-Hulk says as she pulls herself out of the hole she was pounded into. I want to see how Too Tall does without his sprinklers. And she knocks him out with one strong left punch. Nice work, Dane. Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Now then, what were you saying about a holding tank? So, great work here by Wasp as the leader. And we'll get to that in a second. So again, we see the scale of our character, which is just totally great. Love this panel right here. Later, in one of the base's oceanographic labs, you expect me to believe that you didn't know the Avengers were on Hydrobase? It's true. I came in search of the Submariner. I hoped that by defeating him, I could regain favor with Atuma and become part of the new Atlantean order. What is to become of me now? That's up to the maritime authorities. In the meantime, just sit tight. So he's bound in a tank of water, rather humanely imprisoned for now. And then the Wasp and Dr. Druid walk away, talking. Well, another crisis averted. Thank you, Doctor. I really did very little. If not for you, Tyrek might have seriously injured the knight. Oh, that. True. I did talk Dane into letting me tag along to your island when I saw how determined he was to leave the hospital, but we're lucky you were at the hospital yesterday. Ah, luck. I must confess, had little to do with that. As a student of things occult, I'd gone there to ask the knight to let me examine his ebony sword. Don't feel embarrassed, Doctor. I have a confession of my own. I could have blown Tyrak's armor full of holes back there on the beach, but I saw a Dane moving in, so I held back, hoping that he also had guessed Tyrak's weakness. If I'd been wrong, he could have been hurt. But you took the chance, and were right. It was a judgment call, a good one. Doctor, I held back because I wanted someone else to save the day. I'm sick of people telling me how they can't get along without me. So we're seeing something coming here. Well, great house ad for Michael Golden's Nam. I think he only did about 10 issues, maybe 12 issues on the book, but they were pretty awesome. So, cool title. Just once, I wish someone would say, hey, Jan, why don't you take some time off? You deserve it. No one ever does. No one will ever let me off the hook. Janet, there's only one who can do that. You yourself. So Dr. Druid isn't just a medical doctor. He's obviously able to divvy out the advice as well. The life lessons. Hydrobase, 3 days later. I want to thank Thor and the She-Hulk for rejoining us as active members. With Hercules out on the disabled list, that means a lot. On to new business. I invited Dr. Druid to be here today, not only to thank him for helping us against the Masters of Evil and Tyrak, but also to nominate him for Avengers membership. I'll second that, Wasp. I take it that you've decided to expand our active roster to 7? Captain America asks. Not really, Cap. That's up to the new group leader, because I'm stepping down as chairwoman and putting myself on reserve status effective today. What? Captain Marvel and Dane Whitman, the Black Knight, say at the same time. Thor asks, Wasp, why? Lots of reasons, Thor. But I've set up a full active roster and had plans made for the mansion renovation. My desk is clear. I don't see any problems in a transfer of leadership. But Jan, you can't just... Yes, I can, Dane. It's all right. I gave myself permission. Look, if it hadn't been interrupted by the Vision's stint as chairman, my term of office would have ended weeks ago anyway. I'm proud that you've honored me with the position of chairwoman for so long, but I think you can get along without me for a while, and I need some time to myself. Cap, as my last official act, I name you acting chairman. Goodbye, all. Remember, if you need a small specialist, just call. But not for a month, okay? Goodbye, Jan. Take care. Black Knight obviously has a lot of emotion here. Take good care. Ahem, Cap says. Continuing with new business. After we vote on Dr. Druid's membership, we must elect a new chairman or chairwoman. The floor is open for nominations. Next issue, the new leader. So pretty solid issue following the Masters of Evil saga. Nice little fracas there with Tyrak the Treacherous, a great old Avengers villain. Quick perusal of the Avengers Assemble letters page. There's some words from Mark Grunwald talking about the value of editors. And here's a nice short letter. I'll read it. It's from David B. Kiska of South Bend, Indiana. Dear Mark and crew, The story in Avengers 272 was first rate, and it tied in perfectly with Alpha Flight. But enough, please. I think there are a couple of things that need to be changed in the roster. Captain America needs to leave the team. If Cap is going to travel America, he cannot possibly help out the Avengers. Paladin should take his place. Thor should return and Hercules should be out. Thor will deliver the same amount of power, if not more, and Thor will follow orders. Whether you follow the suggestions or not, I will always be a fan. And they reply, well, Thor's back, Dave, but Cap is still hanging in there, and he hasn't missed a meeting yet. We welcome all suggestions. Of course, it's impossible to follow all of them, and many of the suggestions we receive are at odds with each other. Consider the following. All right, so I'll quickly read this letter too, since it seems to lead in from the last one. I was saddened to see the departure of the Submariner in Avengers 277. That must be 267, maybe. I think that's wrong. He was just beginning to become a great Avenger. How about Thor or Ant-Man as a replacement? Listen, I'm pretty upset with the way Black Knight's been acting. The Wasp isn't treating him right. I think it's about time for Captain America to take over the leadership of the Avengers. I'm pleased to hear that Baron Zemo is back. It was always my hope that Zemo would take over the leadership of the Masters of Evil. Let's see the return of the Red Skull. I can't believe that such a classic villain has never fought the Avengers. Okay, so a couple quick letters. Quick read of this Avengers 278, a great issue in the Stern, Buscema, Palmer run, which was a superb, long, multi-year run on the title. If you enjoyed this issue, please like and subscribe, and I'll bring you more soon on Scott Reads Comics. Thanks for watching.